Well, hi there. So good to have you with us. Today we're making easy banana cookies. So they're a great way to start the Learn to Cook course. And the great thing about it is that there's lots of swappable ingredients, which means that if you don't like raisins or you don't like sultanas or you don't like chocolate, you can swap it out. So in the portal, I've listed all the different options to swap things out, but you can get as creative as you want. You can get as healthy as you want, or you can get a little bit naughty, add some things like marshmallows as well. So it's a great little base recipe, great for mixing and stirring and adding. So let's get into it. Well, here we are, and we're going to be making the easy banana cookies today. So you can see that you've got your recipe in front of you. Now, at the moment, you can see my overhead camera, which means that everything that you're cooking and everything that I'm cooking is going to be the same. Just makes it so much easier when you're able to see exactly what I'm cooking. All right, so we've got our recipe. And it says prep time is about 15 minutes, cook time is about 20 minutes. Makes about 12 depending on how big you make them. And you'll see the arrow on the recipe. Now the arrow on the recipe requires adult supervision. So whenever you see that the arrow, you know that you have to ask for help. Or if you're supervising, that's when you may just need a little bit of help. All right, fantastic. So we're all about safety here. Great. So there's a couple of notes there. It says this recipe can be frozen. So your cookies can be frozen. And again, you can swap out any of the ingredients to make them work for you. All right, fantastic. Now, you can see that I've got all of my ingredients in one section here. And I've got all of my equipment in the other section. Now, in French cooking, this is called mise en place, which just means put into position or put into place. And what we do in the first part of our class is just get organized, just to make sure you've got everything on your workbench and you're not having to run around the kitchen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read through the ingredients and the equipment, and we're not worried about volumes at this point. All we're looking at is, do I have these things on my workbench? So I'm going to read through the ingredients first, and then I'm going to get you to, you'll see me point to the various items, and then what I want you to do is just check that you've got them on the workbench as well. All right, fantastic. Let's get into it. You will need some bananas. You can see my bananas are a little bit on the sad side. That is all good. You'll need some cinnamon. You'll need some rolled oats. I've got some quick oats there. You'll need some desiccated coconut. You'll need some craisins or sultanas. I've got sultanas here. You'll need some choc chips. Now, I've just got some melts. Melts, you can either chop them up smaller. I'll show you what I'm going to do with these guys a little bit later in the class. You'll need some pepitas. Pepitas are pumpkin seeds, and I've got them there. Again, you can swap them out. I've got some dried apricots here that I'm going to chop up. You'll need some nut butter or some tahini. So tahini is I'm going to use some, I'll start again. I'm going to use some tahini today, but I've made it with almond butter before and peanut butter. Peanut butter is definitely my favorite, but if you're not able to have nuts in your family, then tahini is just perfect. And you'll need some olive oil or some light coloured oil, light flavoured oil. Now, you may not need to use any olive oil at all. So depending, we'll get to that point in the recipe, but we've got that out just in case. Now, you will need some measuring cups and measuring spoons. You'll need a baking tray. I've just got a baking tray up the top here with some baking paper in it. You'll need a metal fork or a masher. You'll need a bowl. You'll need a spatula. You'll need some large metal spoons. You'll actually only need one metal spoon. You'll need some oven mitts and a cooling rack for the end. Beautiful. All right, let's get into it. So before we start any sort of cooking, we do like all the prep work. So we've just done our organisation prep work, but the next thing we're going to do is preheat our oven to 180 degrees. So if you're not sure how to turn on your oven, ask someone at home how to turn on your oven. Everybody's oven is different. So you'll find that, you know, sometimes you've got to do a couple of buttons just to make sure that it's nice and safe. So go and ask someone at home how to turn on the oven. And there's usually a light. So there's a little light that when the oven is heating up, it's red. And when it gets to the right temperature, it will turn off. But sometimes it'll have a beeper. Everybody's oven is different. Then the next thing we're going to do is line our baking tray. So lining our baking tray, you can see my reflection. I've just got a tray here. I'm going to use some baking paper. I'm going to fold it underneath. Beautiful baking paper. Great. Just tear that out. You can fold it. Sometimes we can reuse baking paper, depending on what your family does. And if you've got a silicone cookie sheet mat, you could use that. All right, fantastic. We're just going to put that to the side out of the way because we're not using that. And we want to make sure that we've got a nice, clear workbench. Okay, so the next thing I want you to do is get your bowl. I want you to grab your bowl and we're going to peel bananas. Now, I've got quite big bananas here, so I'm only going to use 2. But if you've got smallish bananas, you might need 3. Beautiful. So I'm just peeling the bananas and popping them into the bowl. Great. And I put my rubbish away. Excuse me. I always put my rubbish straight into the bin or have a little bowl so that I can just put all my rubbish together. All right, so I want you to get the back of your fork and we're going to start squashing the banana or mashing the banana. I've got one hand on the bowl, just making sure that I'm not, it's not going to fly across the, I've got one hand on the bowl, so I'm making sure that it doesn't fly across the room. Excellent. So squashing, might have to move the bowl around. Sometimes it can be, some bananas are a little, if they're a little bit firm, you might need to use quite a lot of muscles to really get into your banana. Now, we don't want to make it too crazy squashed. So I'm just squashing so that it's kind of broken down like that. Beautiful. All right, then once you're done, okay, So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start adding all the rest of our ingredients to our banana. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is add 2 cups of rolled oats. 2 cups of rolled oats. So I've got my rolled oats here. All right, so that's 1 cup of rolled oats. 2 cups of rolled oats. You'll see that I never measure over the top of the bowl. I always measure at the side. And the reason we do that is we don't want to have accidental spillages, because if we spill things into our bowl, we don't know how much was spilled in. So we do all the measuring at the side and then we add it to our bowl. So 2 cups of rolled oats and then half a cup of desiccated coconut. So desiccated means broken down. All right, and in this case, it's dried out as well. So I've dried out and broken down. So I've got half a cup of desiccated coconut. No need to stir it at this stage. We're going to add everything to the bowl and then we're going to stir. All right, the next thing is 1/4 cup of dried, it can be craisins, sultanas, currants, dried apricots, whatever you've got. You can see that I've got my little cup is on the bench and I'm adding everything to it. Beautiful. Add that straight to your bowl. The next thing you're going to do is add your choc chips. Now I'm going to add dried apricots instead. So it's 1/4 cup of choc chips. But in my case, I'm adding the dried apricots. And this is because this is such a flexible recipe. We can put any kind of add-ins. 1/4 cup of choc chips and then 1/4 cup of pepitas. I had a whole one there left over. All right. You could use sunflower seeds. You could even use sesame seeds, which would be quite nice as well. Great. So 1/4 cup of craisins, 1/4 cup of choc chips, 1/4 cup of pepitas, and then we're going to add our cinnamon. So 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon. So make sure that you've got your teaspoon measure, not your tablespoon. So I'll just show you the difference. So you've got 1/2 teaspoon or 1/2 tablespoon. Well, 1/2 tablespoon is a lot bigger. So we're going to a flat measure and then I'm sprinkling it across the top. Brilliant. And as I finish with things, I'm putting the lids back on. Smells so good, doesn't it? Now, what we've got here is we've got our bananas, and that's quite sweet. It's a sweet ingredient, so that we don't really need to add any extra sugar. So usually cookies are sweet, and we've already added our sweetness by adding the bananas. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is add 2 tablespoons of your nut butter or seed butter. So I'm adding the sesame seeds, the sesame seed paste, which is called tahini. All right, so I'm using my spatula just to make sure that all of the nut butter comes off the spoon and into my mixture. Fabulous. Again, I'm putting my lid back on so I don't have an accidental spill. Great. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we've got our wooden spoon or whatever sort of spoon you've got, and we're going to start mixing our ingredients in together. So you can see that I've got my spoon. I'm holding it with one hand and I'm holding my bowl with the other hand. And I'm wanting to make sure that I don't accidentally flick it across. I don't flick it across the table. So I don't want to sort of like see this sort of caper like that, because that's a surefire way to lose your ingredients. You want to eat your ingredients at the end. All right. So we're stirring it all around. Now you might need to scrape the bowl, scrape the spoon. So I'm using my spatula just to scrape that off a bit. Excellent. And then we're just stirring it around. Now, this is where we're going to find out if we need the olive oil or not. So because everybody's bananas are different, so your bananas might have been quite big, what we're looking for here is if our mixture is sticking together. So I can tell that my mixture is sticking together quite nicely. See how it's coming together in little balls? All right, so that is good. And I'm taking the tip of my spoon and I'm going all the way around the bottom and turning my mixture over, just to make sure that we haven't got any dry patches. Beautiful. We don't want any dry patches. Excellent. If your mixture is a bit crumbly, you might need to add some olive oil. So the recipe says 1/4 cup of olive oil. I would add it a tablespoon at a time. So add a tablespoon and see if your mixture starts to come together. And once it starts to come together and you'll be able to stick it together, then you won't need any more olive oil. Great. All right, so you can see that my mixture has come together in like a nice big sort of ball shape. Then the next thing you're going to do is go and get your baking tray with your baking paper. And we're going to put our bowl quite close to our baking tray. And we're going to get the metal spoon. Let me clear some of this rubbish out of the way so we don't end up with too much clutter. Okay. Now, you might find it a little bit helpful if you've got a little bowl of water. I'm just going to dip my metal spoon into the water, and then we're going to start forming the cookies. So nice and gentle, and you can make your cookies as big or as small as you want, but I make a ball like this. And then we're sort of nice and gently forming them together. Now, remember, they're a little bit different than, say, choc chip cookies in that they've got oats instead of flour and butter. So just be gentle. And we want them to be fairly flat. So I'll just show you the shape. So that's from the top. But then when we turn it to the side, it's like a disc. So I'm just going to wet my hand. And that just creates a layer so that the mixture doesn't stick to my hand. Beautiful. So you just keep working your way through your mixture till it comes to the end. And you can determine if you want a really massive size one, like this guy. Just, you can have a big one like that, or just your average size ones. So I prefer the average size ones, but it's completely up to you. So a little bit of a circular motion. So you've got a ball and then squashing down. Excellent. And again, if your hand starts to get a bit sticky, dip them in the water. So you might want to just pause the video at this stage, or have someone who's got clean hands pause your video while you make the rest of them. Then you can continue on. Great. All right, now, if you leave your balls to sit for about 10 minutes before putting them into the oven, you'll find that they're a little bit firmer, because the oats start to absorb the moisture from the banana. So I've got my tray here. I'm just going to wipe my hands because my hands are messy. So we've got our fabulous tray of cookies here. Now, the last thing that I'm going to do is, and you totally don't have to do this, but I like to put a melt or a couple of chopped chips on the top of the cookies. You can put some pepitas on as well if you want, or you can just completely leave them plain. If you're super fancy, you could even melt some chocolate and drizzle over the top of at the end. Beautiful. Excellent. I've just got some chips there, so I'll just put them on there. Fabulous. Now, I'm just going to leave my mixture to set for about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to pop it into the oven. And the recipe says bake in the oven for about 20 minutes or until browned at the edges. So I'm going to show you what it looks like when I pull them out of the oven. Now, of course, you're going to need some oven mitts to put your tray in and out of the oven, because even when you put your tray into the oven, you don't want to bang your hand on one of the other trays. You can see I just was trying to be smart, and I did that yesterday. So you don't want to get a little burn. Use your oven mitts, or if you're not confident, ask for some help from someone at home who is able to do that for you. Fabulous. All right, so I'm going to pop them in the oven, cook them, and then I'll bring them back and show you what the finished product looks like.